Ready? You ready? You ready? You ready? You ready? Ready? You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Ready? Okay, good. You ready?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. You ready?
For what?
The race! You ready to race? Huh? You ready to race? Yeah? Ready to race? Everybody ready to race? Alright, good. Ready? Ready to race?
Ready to race.
Everybody ready to race? Yeah? Yeah? Alright. You ready to race?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Ready to race? Yeah?
Jesus, yeah.
You ready to race?
We are ready to race.
Awesome, awesome. You ready to race?
I'm ready to race.
Awesome, awesome.
I'm ready to have fun.
What's up, gang? So in the past, what I've done when I've kind of brought you the story of how races go and how crazy they are and how much fun they are, I've tried to tell the story in a typical blog type of format. And I've been doing that for years and years and years on SpeedyLizard.com. Matter of fact, I just posted, if you haven't seen it yet, I just posted the race report for Rockman SwimRun, which is a crazy race. And I kind of did that one a little bit different in that I took my camera with me during the race because that is so hard to describe that you visually have to see how crazy that race is and how technical it is and just how phenomenal the scenery is. So I interspersed some text of kind of telling you the story along with some video from the race. So hopefully you go out and check that out. But this time around, when I talk about Casco Bay Swim Run up in Portland, Maine, I wanted to do a pure video report. So here we go. First things first though, I want to give a huge shout out to Dan Kimball. Him and I decided late last year that we were going to do Rockman Swim Run. Matter of fact, I'd asked Amy Carver to do it with me. And long story short, we ended up switching things around. She ended up doing it with Paul Geist, her better half, and I ended up doing it with Dan. And we really wanted to kind of go into it as hard as we could and be as prepared and as competitive as we could. That evolved into us doing this crazy focus on Swim Run this year, and we've done tons of races through different series and different local races and whatnot as part of our training and as part of our racing this season. And Dan was the key. He's the one that originally turned me on to Swim Run back in 2015 when he asked me to do Otillo and Rockman with him. And over the years, we've done a couple of races together. But this year, he was really been the key. It's because of him that we really did as well as we've done so far this year. Unfortunately, he's been fighting some issues with an injury lately. And so for Casco Bay, he decided to step down from racing and allow himself to heal properly. And it broke my heart because when he said that he wasn't going to do it, we did well on Rockman, but when he said he wasn't going to do Casco Bay, it felt like somebody chopped my leg off or chopped an arm off because I felt incomplete. And I really wish that we could have accomplished that race together, but we didn't. So we originally was signed up. Casco Bay has two different distances. They have a long course and they have a short course. But this year we were signed up for the long course, and we were really looking forward to it. I couldn't find anyone to team up with my crazy butt on doing the long course. I asked around. I talked to people I've raced with before. I've talked to people that were involved in the race. I talked to the race director, Lars. I talked to a lot of different teammates. I even put out feelers out on Facebook on the Swim Run Experience group. I asked a lot of different places, and I could not get anyone to step up for the long course. And I knew it was last minute. It was a week out, so it's not like it's something that you can prepare, or you'd have to already be fit or already be prepared for the race. I was hoping that best case scenario that there was another long course team that had the same situation as us, that had an injury and they couldn't make it. So I was hoping for that, and that didn't happen. Now, as part of all this, as part of me looking for folks to go and do the race, I was put in contact with John McGonigal, and I was contacted by a couple of different angles. Anna Van Husty, and I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, and also via Lars. So we had kind of different angles. I was talking to John about doing the race. He was signed up for the short course, and I really tried to talk him into doing the long course, and just couldn't seem to get him talked into it. So I went to the race briefing Saturday night, the night before the race. It's where we have our gear check, and they Also do a briefing about the course and answer questions and all the safety stuff and check you off the list and everything that has to be done before the race. And I showed up just still not having anyone nailed down as a partner. So I knew that I had one of three options. A miracle, by chance I could find someone that would do the long course with me and we'd go do the long course. If I couldn't do that, then maybe I could find someone that I could do the short course with. And if that failed, then I would have to back down. They did have a solo option where I could do the short course as a solo. I did talk to Lars. I kind of poked him in the ribs a little bit and said, hey, is there any possibility that I could do the long course as a solo? And he's like, nope, not going to happen. So I knew that at worst case scenario, I'd go out and do the race solo on the short course. And I really feel like that. And you guys have heard me talk about this before. You've heard me blog about it before. You've heard me post about it, or you've read posts that I've done about it before. Where I don't think that racing solo is the true nature of SwimRun. It isn't. It doesn't. You don't get the same feel. You don't get the same experience. And in order to get that feel and that experience, you truly have to race it with a partner. But I'd already spent the money. I was already there. I'd already had the flights. I'm in person. If all else fails, at least I'd get to go out and have a good, fun solo race, even though I would miss out on that partner experience. So standing there, right there in the race briefing, I'm looking around the crowd. I even asked Lars if he'd do an announcement to see if anybody was looking for a partner. I know it's last minute, and that didn't pan out. So John showed up, and we got to talking. It was kind of funny because here we were in the back of the race briefing. They're having the race briefing, and we're shaking hands, and it's like a speed dating. We're sitting there sizing each other up. It was kind of like, well, how fast are you? No, how fast are you? And it wasn't like, who's the bigger, badder guy. It was kind of like, are we compatible? So we were trying to size each other as far as our swimming capability and our running capability. And if one of us was going to be a lot faster than the other person, then we thought, well, both of us can either partner up and race together, or we could go solo and we could, as John put it, we could duke it out. And one aspect of compatibility when it comes to picking a teammate, honestly, is personality. You want to make sure that from a personality perspective, you click. And that's so hard to do within a couple of minutes of meeting someone. That's why it was kind of like a speed dating. Because we only had a couple of minutes to make our decision because they're checking folks in for the race. So we had to figure out, are we going to race together or are we going to go solo? And I was sitting there really having a hard time trying to figure out if I was going to race with John or not. But I thought back to the blog posts that I've done, to the Facebook conversations I've had, and what it is to be SwimRun, and I thought about the teammate aspect versus the solo. And I said, you know what? We got to do it as a team. For that reason and that reason only, we got to do it as a team. So we shook hands, we signed up, we got our team going, and then I found out that there were some differences in how we were going to do the race. Like, for example, I was doing it in a SwimRun suit with paddles and buoy, and John was doing it in a full tri-suit, no paddles, no buoy. So I knew there was going to be a little bit of a difference in the water. And I was a little concerned that he may overheat a little bit because it was a little warm that day going into the race. But you know what? We were going to go out there, we're going to give it our best shot, and we're going to have a blast doing it. So fast forward to race morning. Race morning, we're on the ferry, we're headed out to the course, and we're getting everything prepared and getting psyched up, and the more I got to talk with John on the ferry headed out, the more I was like, this is going to be a fun day. I liked his laid-back attitude. I love the fact that he was there to have fun with it, and it seemed like he had a really good head on his shoulder. So I was really looking forward. By the time we were standing on the start line and getting ready to start the race, I was really looking forward to the race. We were both pretty pumped. Now, little did I know that on the start line, was a reporter for the Portland Press Herald, and he got a shot of us as we were taking off on the race. So let me see if I can. So here you got John, like right here. This is John, my partner. Here's my ugly mug. And so this is at the start of the race. As you can see, there are the ferries in the background, the bays in the background, and that's the way we started the race. So that was pretty cool that they had somebody there from the Portland Press Herald taking photos as we were getting the race kicked off. So as we started off, we took off on a pretty brisk pace, and we wanted to establish a kind of a position before we got to the trailhead, because there's some single track trail, not a whole lot. It's very grown in over and very difficult to pass on. So what we didn't want to do was to kind of get bottlenecked right there at the trailhead. So we took off on a pretty brisk pace and then tried to lay the hammer down once we were on the trail. Again, we were joking the whole way. When we came out of the trail, we had the bike that led us out at the beginning of the race. He was there waiting on us as we exited the trail. And we kind of joked around with him a little bit all the way down to the first swim start. We transitioned pretty quick into the first swim. It was the longest swim of the day. It was about a mile or so across. But as we approached the other side, there's this, if I show you the map. Oops, I got it upside down. So on this first swim right here, what you've got like an island that you go past right there. But over here towards the other side, there's this little island right here. You can kind of barely see it on the map. But the currents were kind of pushing us in this direction. So when we got up here, we were almost kind of behind the island and had to kind of make our way around it. And that was pretty tough. And so that was kind of our first insight into, there's some strong currents out here. And I experienced that back in 2016 when I raced it with Dan. But for that particular swim, which we did reverse that year, it was pretty difficult. But we got out of the water. We went for a pretty good little brisk run and got back in and headed over to Vale Island. Vale Island is it's an island of poison ivy, pretty much. But then on the outskirts of that island, I'll show you on the map again. So this is number 5, where you see number 5 there, that's Vale Island. So you swim over to it, you kind of run the outskirts of it, and then you kind of make your way back into the water on the other side. And that whole perimeter of that island is all boulders and rocks. So you're doing a lot of very, very technical trail running when you're making your way around that island. As soon as I got onto the island, I got onto the land first, and I stood up and kind of turned around and faced John as he's swimming up to the shore. And I was kind of watching so that as soon as he stood up, I was going to take off running. And as I was kind of backing my way up the shore, I tripped over this rock. And it was so funny. It was like a cartoon. Both my legs kind of came completely out underneath me, and I landed flat on my back right on top of this rock. And there was a couple of people out there. There was some photographer. There was a guy doing some video recording, and they all kind of stopped. And, "Are you okay?" I just kind of did my thumbs up and stood up, and I looked at the camera guy. I was like, "I hope you got that on film." And I really wanted to get that particular island on video, and that was the one part of the course that I wanted to get on video. And because I fell and I stumbled and I was fumbling with my paddles a little bit, I completely forgot to take out my camera and start recording. So I was more concentrated on just hauling ass, honestly. So I got up, took off running. John's right behind me, and we scrambled across those rocks as fast as we could. When we got done with our 5th swim, it was pretty cool, because when we got into it, one of the things that when we got to the shore and we're looking across the water to see where we were supposed to get out, and there's usually a yellow banner, but across the shore there was someone standing there with a bright red shirt on. So I just pointed to John. I was like, "Bright red shirt, that's where we're headed." So we took off for our swim, and we got out of the water, and we kind of started running towards the person who was standing there with a bright shirt. And I even thanked her. I was like, "Thank you so much for wearing that bright red shirt," because I wouldn't have been able to see where I was going. And she was standing there, and it was kind of funny because she was telling us, she's like, "You guys are doing great, you're doing great, and be careful because the trail's kind of bumpy." And so we found it kind of humorous that she said the trail was kind of bumpy, and that became a joke for us for the next 45 minutes or so. We came out on the road, and there was a sheriff there waiting, and we were the first racers to kind of come out of the trail, so he led us towards the next swim. And that was kind of neat because he threw his lights on it. It was kind of fun to do that. There was a family that had set up a water stop right out there in their front yard, and they had plastic cups for us and whatnot. And so we both stopped and took a drink. We were very thankful because we were really wanting something to drink at that point. So we took on off and got back into the water and headed across over to the Little Chebique Island, which has this grassy, very short grassy kind of a run, and it's almost like a mowed grassy path through this trail. So it's a beautiful little section for us to run. And we got off onto that and had to run along the beach, and the volunteer tells us, hey, just run up there to that boat. And there's a guy standing up there with a boat, and in his very, very thick Maine accent, he goes, just run right up here to the spit. And I was like, I looked at John, I was like, what is a spit? What's he talking about? And it was basically just where the sand of the beach had kind of like jutted out and created this little point that we would run out on. And we ran out on that point and kind of swam across. And as we were swimming across, was thinking about how I had missed out on taking the video of Vale Island with all the rocks. And I was like, you know what, let me take a little more video. So I kind of swam ahead just a little bit, so I had a little extra time, and I rolled over on my back and I pulled out the camera and I took some video of John swimming. And I tried to pan around so you could see all the different support boats, but I ran out of it, the battery ran dead, and that's because I took about an hour and a half of video with it in my pocket. So apologize, it's a real short clip, but that's what we had to go for. And then as we're getting out of the water and heading into the final run, so we took off and finished pretty hard, pretty good. But it was, I think one of the key things about this race is that I think it mimics Otelo with the island-to-island nature and the swim currents of the ocean. But I also really like the fact that all the locals are very supportive of the race. We were getting cheered on by people that were sitting around watching, the people setting up water stops in their front yard, people driving by and clapping and beeping their horns, and just everybody was so supportive of the race, and that was a lot of fun. But most of all, it was a ton of fun to race with John. Meeting somebody the night before and then having it's just a wonderful race. Someone with such a great attitude that could joke and laugh and carry on and just really give all that he had to give. I mean, he poured his heart out into that race, and it showed. And it was a lot of fun to race with someone like that. So don't discount if you're another swim runner and you've got an injured partner or you've got a situation where you can't race. Don't give up, and don't just DNS, do not start. Reach out there and find someone else to do the race with, because I think you'd be pleasantly surprised if you get teamed up with someone like I did with John. So there you have it. There's a race.